bit of a delay. We had a very crazy little last 5 minutes of technical issues. Always fun when you have to reboot your computer about 5 minutes before a webinar. So always a good time. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I do want to encourage you to take a quick moment and just say hi to us in the chat. Always remember to switch that chat to all panelists and attendees. So say a quick hello. It helps Victoria know that we're here with actual people and human beings, and you know, it helps us feel that we're presenting from an audience. So Judy, Judy comes in first. Hello from Mississauga. Hey Judy, how's it going? Judy Lloyd.
Hi Judy.
So we do want to get started, but thanks so much, Angie Peters. It's just a webinar of my favorite people here. Just the way it goes. So that's pretty cool. But we got Pickering, Moncton, Montreal, where we are on holiday. Bonne fête de Saint-Jean-Baptiste. Today is the national holiday in Quebec, right? So they're, think about this. They're taking extra time off of their day off to be here to talk about DISC.
Wow.
And how to
I'm impressed. Thank you guys. That's awesome.
So that's pretty awesome. I love it. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Now, I don't want to take up much time, but I do want to first, thank everybody for tuning in. You know, these webinars, they don't happen without an audience. And we appreciate everybody for coming in, for being here with us. And secondly, I want to, they're saying we're agents, we don't get a day off. Come on.
Very true.
Yeah. But secondly, I want to thank Victoria Theriault, who's the founder for Discover What Works. Now, Victoria actually has a pretty long history with Royal LePage. She actually used to work at Royal LePage Canada. I've known her for quite a few years. And one of the things that, you know, for those of you maybe who are on this webinar who have never met Victoria before, you need to know that Victoria breathes DISC. It is something that is just a core part of her. One of the things that I often hear when she presents from people, and I've seen her present many times, we were just at some kickoffs last January together, and somebody leaned over and said, she's very passionate about this. And I said, yeah, she's very, her passion on DISC really comes through. And that's why I'm super excited to be here to host today's webinar for our Maintaining Momentum series. Now, that said, you know, it's not just her passion, it's her certification in it. So she is a certified DISC TEIQue and GIA Analyst. TEIQue, did I get that right?
You did, Mike. Yay.
I thought I'd mess it up, and then see, I should have just gone for it. But as well as a certified team facilitator. So in terms of that, you know, Victoria really specializes in building leaders and teams through job profiling, communication, and the application of DISC analysis. You know, we use DISC all the time at Royal LePage Canada for our hiring. I know teams, I know brokerages who say DISC is a must part of their hiring. So I'd be curious, can I ask if they know what their DISC profile is in the chat, or are we going to get
to that'd be fun. Do that. Yeah, for sure.
So DISC, I'm sure we're going to talk about what the acronym means, but if you do know, I am an I, I'm a high I. That's me.
Really, Mike? We never would have guessed that.
Oh, who would have thought?
There we go. There's some observable behaviors. We're going to get into that, but watch Mike as he does those things, and you will be able to figure out his high I.
And don't forget people to change. See, I can tell some people who they didn't hear the instruction of changing the chat to all panelists and attendees, but we got Victoria, who's I as well. Jack, who's an extreme D. I'd like to know what an extreme D is. I don't know. I worry though. I don't know if we'd get along. But for those of you who don't know, we're going to learn, I'm sure, more about it today in our webinar. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Victoria to talk about communicate, connect, and close.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate that. And for those of you, in case you were curious, when Mike was talking about, did he pronounce the TEIQue certification right? Just so you know what that stands for is actually emotional intelligence, or EQ, as is sort of more of the buzzword. So that's what that one relates to. And that's a really fascinating, deeper dive, I guess I would say, than DISC. So in case you were curious, that's that one answered. So thank you again, Mike. And let's get started here. So I got to make sure my screen is going to move. If we have any more technical difficulties, Mike, honestly.
Well, I mean, sure, why not? Throw them in.
Okay, we're good. There we go. There we go. We've just been like, what is going on today? All right. So I just kind of wanted to start with this, everyone, because I recognize, the period of time that we're at, we're not quite where we were at the beginning of this. And I was doing a lot of webinars talking about what to do, like right as this sort of hit us and what we were doing. But now we're at this point where I'm calling it moving forward. So we're coming out of this period of time, we're moving forward. And I think, you'll agree with me, and you can let me know what you think, is that I think one of the things that we can all say we've learned from this is the value of human connection. When we had that restricted or taken away, I think a lot of us realized how essential that is to us, how important it is, and just how it feels to not really have it. So what I think is happening, and I think this will have to for sure be one of the positives that come out of this period of time, is that people have this really renewed focus on human connection and what is that about. So people are going to appreciate it more, people are going to need it more. So it is more important now than ever that we're really going to work on, solidifying those relationships that we have with prospects and with clients, and making sure that when we are connecting, that we are really connecting in a way that is intentional and that is in a way that, speaks to them. So if you've heard me speak, one of my sort of pet peeves is sort of this, any kind of mentality that talks about a one size fits all approach to anything, to any kind of strategies. I just don't think it works. So I think doing that would only net you average results. So it is vital that you have an understanding of there's different personality types out of there and how to customize your interactions to really ensure that you are connecting with all of those personality types. So again, a lot of you probably know this, but just a quick overview in case you don't. What I'm using to do this is DISC theory. And so DISC theory looks at the fact that there are 4 quadrants of behavior and, in layman's terms, more of 4 different personality styles. And, some people are more comfortable with seeing them as colors, other people as words. So what they are is dominance. So dominance is a high D, and that's red is associated with high D. We've got influence, which is a high I, and it's yellow. We've got steadiness, high S, and that's green. And then compliance, which is blue, and that would be your high C. And so, a lot of us do exhibit, all of these in different sort of parts of our personality, but we all do have dominant ones that sort of rise to the surface. And within these, this is where you can sometimes see some observable behaviors with people. And this is where you can kind of figure out what's making them tick so that you can get in there and make that kind of connection. You're sort of quote unquote going to speak their language. You're going to understand where they're coming from. That's really crucial to relationships. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I like to have fun always when we're learning. I think we learn better when we can have some fun and have some visuals. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of a high D. Okay, so D standing for dominance. That was the word that was first used in 1928. I know a lot of people shy away from that word because it sounds sort of harsh, and a lot of people will say a driver instead. And you will see that the driver is an adjective up there. There are a lot of ones though that you can say, like they're determined, they're decisive, they're driven, direct. So a lot of those words definitely suit it. And so, what high Ds are known for is that they are self-starters. They are very direct. They can be competitive. It's usually within themselves though, which is an interesting thing. Ds quite often are misunderstood. I will say that because they can come across very aggressive. So the word I've used that you can see on the screen is assertive. Assertive is a positive word. There really isn't anything wrong with being assertive. Aggressive carries with it a different connotation. And so it's important to sort of clarify that. And I can tell you from experience that most high Ds are assertive versus aggressive. It's just the fact that that focus that they have on what is the bottom line, what is the end result, that tends to sometimes look to people who don't have a high D, it tends to look a little bit blunt or harsh. And that is maybe why that comes across that way. So, having a look at the figure, this little figure that I've got here in the box, and there'll be a bigger one of that in a second, but that one, you can see that one can probably look a little bit, maybe intimidating, a little bit aggressive. But so what are some of these things that you can pick up, as somebody who's trying to speed read a prospect or a client and figure out what can I make of this? So, what you will notice with high Ds, and of course I have Serena as my example here, definitely a driven, determined champion, so having these little tells will help you. So for instance, D's, if you're meeting a D and it's like, you know, it's at your open house or at something, D's have a very much a steady eye contact, and you know, it's very direct, and they don't necessarily need to look away. Again, a lot of these things we're not able to really use at this current moment in time. So, you know, firm handshake, I don't think we're shaking hands right now. But, you know, if we ever get back to that, that's something that you would know. So here's some things that haven't changed that you can see. So, and you'll see it in the figure, they point. So D's do tend to either point, or they sometimes will kind of, you know, place their hand down for emphasis as they're speaking. So, you know, they'll say something and they'll kind of go like this, and, you know, it's sort of an emphatic thing. It's not in any way of something like, you know, you will listen to me. It's not that. It's literally just like, here's my point. I'm impassioned. And just as, you know, have a funny one. I don't know. I think a lot of you, if you guys tune into this regularly, you know, last week we had on Michael Phrase, and I was watching his body language. As you know, as Mike says, I'm obsessed with it. I can't help myself. And there was more than a couple times, but he was kind of making points. And he was kind of, at first I heard the noise and I thought, what's that noise? And then I was like, oh, he's kind of emphasizing, and he was super passionate and did a great job at presenting. But, you know, pretty much guarantee you that Michael has a high D in his profile. So that was me doing one of these little things that we can do, is figuring that out. You know, D's may interrupt. Again, I think they get a bad rap for this. It's not because they don't think what you're saying is important, but because they are driven by so much passion and determination that they sometimes have a thought and they're like, yeah, and then they kind of do that. So, you know, if you notice that in your prospect or your client, that might be what's happening. And then I kind of like to do more of a light, fun little piece at the end of each one of these. So what I will tell you is that D's often wear strong colors. So you can maybe think about that if you've met the person, or, you know, even just in their social media photos or whatever. If they wear strong colors like regularly, I mean, we could all wear strong colors, but if it's something that you're noticing consistently, that might be another tell for you. And of course, with Serena, obviously, she definitely stands out on the tennis circuit in those, you know, full on bold colors, you know, purple here. And she's had all kinds of really, really interesting, bold pattern choices as well. So I'm going to see if there we go. All right. So again, here is this figure a little closer up, and, you know, he's pointing, you can see that emphasis on the D. So, you know, with D's, here's my advice for you. So get to the point directly. You know, you do want to get to the point directly. You don't want to give them unnecessary details. D's are the people who will kind of say something to you like, hey, bottom line it for me. You know, D's are like bullet points, like, is it this or is it this? They don't need to be preoccupied because they are so decisive. They don't need to weigh every single factor. They can actually get there quicker. So I guess we have to apologize, Mike, to this one. So be punctual. D's just like having their time wasted. So sorry for this the tech problem starting this. So for all the high D's,
Jack, the extreme D, did stick around for us. So he did still see value. And the funny thing is, I did a quick Google search for him, and sure enough, in one of the videos, he's got a perfect purple jacket on with a nice purple square. I was like, there you go. There's those bold colors.
I love it. That's awesome, Mike. Thank you. Is Michael Phrase isn't by any chance watching us? Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. Anyway, so again, yeah, if you have a meeting with a high D or something, make sure that you are punctual because they dislike having their time wasted. And if, for instance, there is something like this, like a tech difficulty that started something late, just say it for what it is and that's it. You don't need to go on and explain and do whatever. They don't want to know. Say it to them. It's done. Move on. Again, we're always focusing on what that bottom line is. They're very results focused. And so, for instance, here's an example that you would say if you're talking to a high D. Okay, so here's what needs to happen to get this property sold. So instead of maybe listing and going through, oh, you guys have this in your house, you have this in your house, you have whatever. No, just take a few bullet points and be like, here's what needs to happen. So that will ring true to a D. They will appreciate that. And that is you speaking their language. All right, so moving on. Now we have high I, and I stands for influence. And so I's are very much, you know, they love to chat. They're very friendly. They like to talk with their hands, as, you know, we were kind of joking, Mike and I was saying, you know, maybe you can pick up on Mike. So I's kind of tend to do a lot of, you know, having this, you might see an I driving in a car and you see them doing this and nobody's in the car and you think, ooh, I hope they're on the phone or else they're just having a really engaging conversation with themselves. But anyway, they definitely are that kind of, that's definitely a really easy one to pick up on. But eyes are what can we learn about eyes? They're very influential, they're persuasive, they're very friendly, they're communicative, they love to share stories with you. And so, quite often you will hear stories, you might get a little more than you bargained for sometimes, depending on how high up that eye is. And if they don't have a counterbalancing factor, so eyes definitely are talkers. And, I have this example of course, Barack Obama. And in the example, he is doing a little bit of hand talking there, but you can certainly see, no matter how you felt about him politically, you can certainly recognize that the charisma was there, that he had a vision, and that he was really successfully able to get people on board with that vision based on that charismatic high eye. And what I can tell you, realtors, is that, predominantly I find high eye is the most common factor among realtors. So the reason for that, it's not a coincidence that you've gone into sales. It's because you like to interact with people. You enjoy that. That is, you prefer sort of people and interacting over processes and procedures. That's sort of more what, is in it for you. And so, you are probably surrounded, your cohorts are probably a lot of high eyes, but it's good to know if that's your client too. So if you have a client that does a lot of, telling you a lot of stories, sometimes oversharing, a lot of hand talking, chances are they're probably going to be a high eye. So, some of the notes I've written here, of course, enthusiastic and sociable, telling stories and sharing feelings. Again, we're not really doing the contact piece here or the hug, but if you're thinking back to interactions you've had, and this is really what I've been recommending people do, is not just as you go forward, but go through your CRM as we're going through this, go through your database and think about things like that. Oh, is that person always a hugger, or is that person, take a note of it and put it in your CRM so that the next time you're having an interaction, it's like, oh, high eye, okay, right. So I'm going to kind of meet them where I know that they need to be, or the things that need to be engaged for them. So then the fun little fashion piece I have for eyes is eyes are quite often stylish. They are fashionable. They'll take fashion risks. Believe it or not, this photo was an example at the time of a mini presidential scandal, because Obama was wearing a tan suit and that had not been done. So there he was trying to be a little bit avant-garde and fashionable, and some people were losing their minds over that. But there he is in that infamous tan suit being stylish. So I have a fun little aside here. So Mike, you might want to check the chat box here. I have guess who. So one of the things that eyes are known to do is, like I said, with the, with that fun fashion piece, they kind of have a little bit of a fashion flair. They'll wear, funky socks or pocket squares, or for women, maybe they'll have, a really cool streak in their hair, or funky purses, that kind of thing. So do we have any guesses on who?
Well, a couple people have said Phil. Somebody's asking if Trudeau might be a high eye.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, the answer to Trudeau is I do believe Trudeau is a high eye. Yeah.
So we're between those two. But
okay.
My guess would be Phil, simply because I don't think you snapped a picture of Trudeau's socks like this.
Well, that's a story for another webinar, but yes. Guess who is right. So for those of you that tuned in, Phil and I did a Philosophy Friday a few weeks ago, and we did have a few laughs at his expense. If you can see Phil, or you talked in, he is definitely a hand talker, and he loves to tell stories, and he's obviously very charming and persuasive. So yes, indeed, these super cool funky socks belong to Phil Soper. So with eyes, the thing to remember is, again, we're engaging them on their platform, on how they want to be engaged with. So, with a high eye, before you move right into the business thing, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take a few minutes and definitely do that sort of warm up. You want to ask them what's going on, how are things been, and again, be prepared that if you're going to be talking to a high eye, you're going to have to set aside, double the time that you would if you're talking to like a high D. Because the high eye will definitely want to answer all those questions, and you will end up hearing all kinds of stuff that maybe, you weren't sure you were going to know, but you'll hear about, what medication the dog had to get put on, and, what's happening with your son's soccer league and whatever. So you need to do that. eyes will feel so much more connected to you if you do that. The interesting thing is if you try to do that with a D, you know, they don't really have much time for that. It's kind of just like, okay, yeah, hi, good, good, good. How are you? Okay, now what's the point of this call? Or what, you know, what is the point? Whereas, here's a great example of how you can't use the same approach, because if you're doing that with a D, you're doing this with a D, you'll lose them. They'll be kind of like, and if you were to do a D approach with an I, they would kind of feel like, oh, that seems harsh, or they don't like me, or they don't want to chat. So whenever possible, you know, you do want to engage eyes in person. Again, this has been something that's definitely been challenged for us. So what I'm saying to people now during this whole COVID period is, you know, for sure, either a phone call, but even, you know, a video chat. So doing a Zoom conference, doing stuff like that, doing a FaceTime. Again, eyes will feel more connected to you if they can look at you and they can kind of feel that interplay between people. That will really help them. Don't use too many details or technicalities. They're not interested. They're more interested in the way that relationship feels. Remember, eyes are all kind of about feelings. And so that's what needs to be supported with eyes. And, you know, and speaking of that, you know, try to evoke emotions and feelings into what you're saying, because that is what, like, they hear that and that resonates with them. So for instance, you know, I feel this property would be a good fit for you. I can see you making happy memories here. So you are invoking emotions and feelings into that, and you're allowing them to sort of paint a picture, which is what eyes like to do. And that helps them feel that they can make a decision easier.
One thing, can I ask in terms of that?
Yeah.
Is, you know, one big tip always is if you're doing stuff, because like you said, eyes and this virtualness really struggle with that. And
Yeah.
one important tip to know is if you're doing stuff via webinar, the best thing you can do is try to bring whatever you're supposed to pay attention to close to the webcam. But I was wondering what your thoughts on, you know, compared to like an eye and that like constant eye contact, is that too much? Do you think a D, like if I let's say I was a D and you were an I and I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Would that be too much? Like, how, you know, how important is that eye contact? Because it's very easy to get distracted. You know, I'm here, I got email here, I got this, that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for sure, you're going to want the eye to know that you are hearing them and seeing them and recognizing them. I don't know that you have to have that, you know, intense eye contact with. I will tell you who you don't want to have it with, and this will be coming up in 2 from now, is a high C. You do that to a high C up close, click, they're ending. You're freaking them right the heck out.
So you almost left the webinar there. Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Sorry, did I answer your question, Mike? Was that
Yeah,
good?
you did. And I think it's really important. Again, people need to remember that, you know, your webcam is not where your screen is. If you're doing this the whole time, an eye is going to be like, I guess they're not paying attention to me. So, right. So
exactly. So yeah, they're going to want to know that they're, whichever way they want to know that you're feeling. So you are responding to them. You're doing a lot of that, like, yes, like engaging, like doing, you know, sort of mimicking body language back to them, because that's what they're doing. And if they see you doing that back to them, they're going to feel that connection. They're going to feel like, oh, this person is invested in this relationship. They're paying attention. And I know sometimes people forget, because, you know, often you're on a Zoom and the person is like this, like on their phone.
Right.
Oh, I think they're forgetting the camera's on. Like,
right. And if you're talking with somebody, you might like the phone. It's so easy. It's hard to do that in person, but it's so easy online to feel a little disconnected and be like, yeah, oh, what's going on? And then you're like, hi, are you? And I'm saying to people here, if we're connecting with people to close, then doing that with an eye is probably a really bad idea.
Exactly. Very good, Mike. Thank you. Yeah. So now we're moving on to steadiness. Okay. And so with the I's and the D's, those behaviors are a lot more externalized. So they're easier to kind of speed read. S's and C's are definitely harder because of the fact that they don't, you know, with the D, with that emphasis or the banging of the hands, or the I with all the hand talking, you don't see this as much with an S and a C because their behavior is more reserved. So you kind of really got to look for it. I mean, that alone is sort of a tip off. Oh, I haven't noticed any extreme hand motions or things like that. But just to give you a little bit of background on what this means. So S is steadiness. S's are known to be very amiable. They're good listeners. And here's kind of like a little note to take on S's, is that they will listen more than they will talk. So that's not always very easy for you as realtors, because you really then have to kind of probe, because they are not giving you stuff. With a high I, it's so easy. You kind of just wind them up and sit back and they were going to tell you everything. What I will tell you about high I's is just don't interrupt them, like let them go, because you will end up finding out all kinds of stuff. So that works to your advantage. You have to work a little harder with S's. S's are definitely going to give you more of a challenge because they are the listeners. And, you know, they are famous for doing this thing that I call the S nod. And so when you're talking to them, they'll be doing this. And, you know, there's maybe like a pleasant face. It's nodding. Do not ever think that that nod means yes. So what that nod means is I'm listening, I'm processing, I'm taking this in, and I'm going to think about it. So if you were to move in and try to close too quickly with an S, you would scare the heck out of them because they don't like to be rushed. One of the big trademark factors with S's, don't like to be rushed. They work at a steady pace. They like to take their time. They're very thorough. So they are very thorough. They're very, very tenacious. They want to do things right. But if you try to rush that process, they feel very threatened and defensive, and they do not like that. So don't ever try to push a high S. That much I can tell you. That's a real one to take away. Don't do that. So if you've noticed that they're doing a lot of nodding, that they're more of a listener, you're going to write down, this person's probably a high S. They do come across as easygoing and patient. In terms of Mike and his eye contact question, you know, with S's, it's sort of intermittent. So it's a little bit, sometimes it'll be looking away. It's not certainly as engaged and direct as a D or as expressive as an I, so intermittent. And what I will say about S's in terms of the fashion piece is not to say they're not fashionable, but S's are always, they're just very practical. So they will dress for whatever that day is sort of looking at. If they're, if we're going to look at homes, you know, probably they'll have like reasonable shoes that maybe they can slip on and off easily as they're going into the house. Like they're just very, you know, organized and know what they need to do for the day. So very practical. And with S here, again, you know, with the figure that we had used, or sorry, I don't think I addressed. So Dr. Sanjay Gupta is my example of an S. The reason that I have him and I also have that figure that's, you know, got the stethoscope around the neck is that, you know, we will find quite often S's like to help people. They really are helpers. They like to be that listener, mentor, counselor type. So quite often you will find that GPs, nurses, they tend to be high in S. Teachers are also very high in S. And so you will see that. And so with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and I think, you know, especially with all the COVID and everything, that he's definitely been someone who has been on and kind of, you know, S has a very kind of keep calm and carry on approach. They say things, but they deliver it in a steadfast manner, in a steady way, not alarmist, so that it sort of feels easier to take. So that's kind of the mantra for S, I always think, is like that keep calm and carry on. And I always joke that I think S's are probably the best poker players because, you know, no matter what, they just kind of have that neutral S nod going on and you don't really know. And I guess I would say I's are probably going to be the worst because if they can't control all of that. So anyway, so with S's, you know, when you feel that the person is an S, what do you want to do? So you do want to speak at a steady pace and you want to do that measured tone. So not only are the words you're saying, you want to try to create friendly, relaxed, but even in the tone. So you would be like, hey, so today we're going to look at these houses. And, you know, so you're actually going to try to just make your language sound very relaxed and not quick paced. Again, I've got this, again, don't rush them. Always give them time to think things over. So if you want them to make a decision, you got to prep them ahead of time and let them know it's something for them to consider. Certainly not on the spot. That would never work. Be prepared to do more of the talking because this is how it's going to go with the S. I mention again, because I just can't stress this enough, not to be fooled by the S nod. It does not mean yes. It just means I'm thinking, I'm listening, I'm processing. So here's an example of how you would approach the S. So what you would do is you would say, okay, so here you go, take some time, think about what we discussed, and get back to me when you're ready. So all of that is music to their ears. So you've said it to them in a very calm way. And, you know, you basically put the ball in their court and said, you get back to me when you're ready. And I can tell you, ironically, what happens is when you say those types of things to a high S, they will actually make up their mind faster than if you were to pressure them. If you were to kind of go in quickly and say, well, what do you think? What are your thoughts? They're like, and they kind of freeze and they don't know what to say. And so by you allowing them, hey, take your time. It's all right. Get back to me. Then it kind of frees up that stress and they're able to think clearly. And ironically, they will end up getting back to you faster than they would have. All right, high C. So C stands for compliance. And, you know, C's are known to be not only compliant, but also very, you know, another word that I have there is careful. C's are very much about things being logical, factual. C's are not at all emotional. So when we were talking about I's making impulsive or emotional decisions, you would never ever catch a C making an emotional or impulsive decision. Everything is about logic and facts and details. So the more of that you can provide to people that are your high C clients, you know, the better that is, because they really need information to make decisions. And C's feel more confident. The more that they learn and understand and know, the more their confidence level rises, because they feel that they can make an informed decision. That's really important to them. Even if you see that they're sort of having an emotional reaction to something, they kind of won't let themselves give in to that. They want to make sure that they, you know, made a spreadsheet, have a list, checked it off, that it all, you know, checks out. So again, C's are very process oriented. You know, they might be your client who's taking notes. You know, they will always ask for detailed information. And again, here are some tells. So when we talk back to that whole eye contact, and I joked with Mike about that intense up close eye contact, C's tend to make minimal eye contact. So they don't tend to have a lot of it. So there's kind of a good tell for you to look for. If you notice that you're not getting a lot of eye contact, chances are that prospect or client could be a high C. And in terms of the fun fashion piece, you know, C's are usually very neat and tidy and well put together. And it's funny, like if you had a day of showing them homes, what I would say is at the end of the day, that C would look just as neat and tidy as they looked at the beginning of the day, because they would have taken the time, you know, maybe when you had lunch to, you know, reapply the lipstick or tuck in the shirt or brush the hair. Which is funny, because if you look at that with I's who I have basically said are the most fashionable of the four, and they are, but I's tend to be a hot mess by the end of the day because of all of that emoting and hugging and whatever, and just like living life, just being raw with their emotions, doesn't go in for a whole lot of putting together at the end. So that's another fun little piece that you can look at. If your person looks just as neat and tidy and all tucked in, they're probably a high C. So with your high C's, again, back to the eye contact, because they don't tend to make a lot of eye contact, I've literally seen people try to almost bring that out in people. So if the person's not meeting their eyes, they kind of do a little bit of this, like trying to do it. Don't do that. Don't try to like intensify it to make up for it. So avoid that. You don't want to intimidate them. C's will feel kind of intimidated by that. When you are meeting with a C, so how I was, you know, stressing about don't be late for D's. By the way, C's don't love you to be late either. They just won't get as bent out of shape about it as D's will. They'll in their mind think, well, that's not very proper. They broke the rules, but they won't hold it against you. But what I will say is make sure you're prepared for your meetings, because C's are going to have, I can guarantee you, they will have done all the work. Like, you know, so you make sure you've done your homework, because the C's will probably already have looked at the stats and, oh, I know this person, or I talked to this, or I Googled such and such. So they will have put the work into it. So please make sure that you have done that too. You always want to, when you're connecting with a C, you want to use logical statements, and you want to make sure that you've got facts and details to support your point of view. So C's aren't impressed by somebody with bravado, with saying, oh yeah, oh, I got this, don't worry, like I know what I'm doing. And C would be like, well, okay, like show me that. Like, where does it say that? Like, I need to actually have proof of that. So make sure that you have that. Always provide your information in writing. Even if you end up having a call or something, I would always recommend that you follow back up with an email or something, because these are the people that read your emails. So, you know, when you send those long detailed emails, these are the people that will read them. So please let your C's have the emails. And so here's an example, what you would say. So based on these monthly stats, the facts seem to suggest. So here's two things that we're calling in stats. So we're pulling attention to a stat. So there's something that is sort of logical and facts. And again, facts, here are facts. That will help your C feel that they understand and they're connected to what you're trying to say. Here's a fun little thing. I posted this, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and a lot of people enjoyed it. So again, this goes to Mike's theory about me eating, breathing, sleeping disc. I just had a fun little thing where I thought, if disc were social media, like what would it be? So just to drive the points home a little bit for you, you know, so we have on the top left, we've got Twitter, which I have said is D. So direct, concise, thrives on conflict. Yes, D's, yes, Twitter. Instagram is high I, all hearts, trendy, not too many details. S is Facebook, tenacious. That's mostly because of Mark Zuckerberg and his whole approach, but that's longer than we have to talk about right now. So tenacious, supportive, more room to listen. And then LinkedIn is C, business focused, detail oriented, not impulsive or emotional. You never see those types of posts on LinkedIn. It's always business, factual, to the point. So that's a fun little way to have a look at looking at what all the factors mean in the social media lens. So what I always recommend, is now that you know these things, you've thought about these things, go through your database, your CRM, and augment it. So consider those behaviors. So think back and be like, oh yeah, that person nods a lot, but doesn't say a lot. Or oh, okay, yeah, like that person seems very direct and to the point and doesn't want unnecessary things. So actually go in and write what you think their factor is so that the next time you need to do some kind of either a face-to-face or some kind of touch point, that you're going to do that in the right way. So you're either going to do it in terms of, oh, it's going to be a phone call or it's going to be a video chat or whatever. Make sure that you're doing it the right way, because what you're doing is you're solidifying that connection. You're making sure that you are speaking to that person and you are recognizing who they are and how they like to be communicated with. So I have an example. So I'm going to ask you guys this, and Mike can look at the chat box. So here's my little test example, okay? So Katie is always super chatty. She gets off topic easily. When I send her emails, she rarely reads all the information and instead will call me and ask me something I've already answered. I think Katie is a high. I'm waiting for some of your answers. I see Mike smiling.
I got an answer now already.
Uh-huh.
We're seeing a lot of, I got a story to tell you about that. No, we got a lot of I's. One person guessed an S. One person, but I see a lot of high I's. One person did guess an S in terms of there, but I seems to be the driver.
I seems so very good. Everyone is paying really close attention. So that's awesome, you guys. You did a really good job. Katie is definitely a high I. High I's will do that. You send them stuff and they'll come back and be like, oh, whatever. Oh, didn't I? Oh, I sent you that. Oh, you did? Anyway, so I'm sure you're pretty used to that if you have high I clients. And again, even your colleagues, this may happen with as well. So what I've done is I've kind of broken things down in terms of the sales model. So we're going to look at different ways, like, opening, closing. So what are the specific ways to get through to the people this way? So for D's, keep socializing brief and get to the point directly. Okay. So remember, D's they don't need that warm up. They don't need extra chit chat, and they want to really know what you have to say. So I'm calling you to follow up on your interest in this property. Okay, so right to the point, you're saying what your intention is, boom. You're not going to take that same approach with the next box, which is an I. So you're going to use more of a friendly conversational tone, and you're going to try to focus on their feelings. So for instance, you're picking up, it seems like you feel a strong connection to this house. So you're seeing them as they're walking through the house. Again, you're picking up on their emotional reaction, because that is the thing. And I will, warn you, joke with you that I's are kind of notorious for that. Remember, we talked about impulsive emotional decisions. They could be somebody who walks in, and even though the house wasn't necessarily what you thought they wanted, but they could walk in and be like, oh my God, I love it. I'm going to put the piano here. I'm going to put the bookcase here. And just a heads up with that, as quickly as they can do that and be like, yeah, let's put in an offer, they might then go home that night and then have another impulsive thought and be like, ooh, maybe that wasn't good. So just a heads up, if you feel like it's super radical or they've changed their mind, it's probably an I, and you might just want to hold off and make sure they're sure on it before you put that offer in. Okay, so then with S, again, with S, we're going to use a very low pressure, but a focused approach. So you don't want to rush them again. So here's the information that I prepared for you. Take your time, look it over. Again, we're giving them time to take. We're asking them to look it over. We're not asking them for any split-second decisions here, just leaving that at a very calm pace. With C, again, C's have some similarities with D's. So with C's, you want to get to the business, swiftly. You'll get to the point, but without pressure. D's themselves are okay if you kind of make confident, sort of strong statements, whereas C's will feel a little bit like intimidated by that. So you can get right to business. You don't have to do the whole I chit chat, but get to business. Be careful not to invade their privacy. So C's don't like to like cough up a whole pile of information at first. But what I will tell you is that when a C really knows you and trusts you, and a lot of that is to do with your track record and how informative you are and that type of thing. Once they know you and trust you, that part is going to disappear, and that will help. But initially, they definitely are going to be careful about not wanting to share too many details. So with C's, you almost have to take this indirect approach. So for instance, use indirect questions to discreetly uncover their opinions. So let's say you've done, you're there, you're doing listing presentation, you've got the CMA out there. So you would just sort of say, so looking at the CMA, here are the comparables, here are the properties that have sold in the last 18 months. What are your thoughts on what that looks like? So again, you're making that about the information, and you're not fully coming in, they have something to look at. They have time and room to think about it. And it's sort of an indirect way to get at their opinion instead of that direct full approach that you would have with a D. Now for presenting, okay. So with Ds, remember Ds do have natural confidence, and they also usually like to see confidence in other people. So you're going to use statements or questions which emphasize efficiency and reduce the chances of failure, because one of the trigger words for D is failure. So Ds do not want to fail. And sometimes people misunderstand that when I say it. And it's not about, oh, I can't do that because I'm going to fail at it. It's just like, my whole goal here is for a successful result. So failures are sort of not an option. Like I got to go and I'm going to crush this. That's very much a D attitude. So you want to be making statements that play into that for a D. So, for instance, I've sold more houses in this area than my competitors. Very direct, to the point, super confident. That will impress a D. We're going to look at some of the other ones where you'll see that won't be the same approach, because that won't impress everyone. I always like to give a little heads up. Make sure that you actually have sold more homes in your area. This is just an example. If you're saying that, make sure it's true. Okay, so for I's, with I's, you want to use statements or questions that allow the client to feel good and gain recognition. So again, remember I's, everything is about that connection they have with you, how they're feeling, their emotions. So your house is going to show very well. The purchasers will be so impressed with your decor. So you're building into that. You're letting them know, yeah, like look at your house, it's great. Like it's a whole feel good thing. You're going to really connect with them that way. With S's, you're going to talk about things that emphasize things like harmony and stability. And one of the best ways to do that with an S is talking about testimonials, because a testimonial is basically somebody else vouching for you and saying, yes, I had this great experience. So in testimonials, my clients praise my high levels of customer service and my follow through. And why did I choose that one as an example? Well, that's what S is really about. S's are known to be fantastic at customer service and at following through. And so, that is definitely something that you want to point out. You want them to know that. And that is why we're focused on that. So with C, you're going to use statements or questions which pertain to high standards, to logic, to accuracy. Remember, this is what it's all about for C. They want to see that kind of thing. So this data shows that I have one of the most reliable and productive track records in this area. So I don't know if we want to weigh in on this a little bit, Mike, but I'm just curious to see if there's a subtle difference between, and they're one on top of the other here, so the D and the C. The D and the C statements are kind of similar, right? They're basically both saying the same thing. Can anyone point out to me what the nuance is? Is there a difference in those statements, and what is that difference? Why is the C statement going to appeal more to the C? Has anybody picked up on what that is?
So what some people are saying is they're saying it's the data. It's about the data for the C. And then one of Jack,
Yes.
the extreme D, is saying D is just more definitive, right? So like.
Yes, exactly. So absolutely right, you guys. That's you.
D is boss.
With that?
D is boss.
Oh, you gotta love high Ds, right? They're just, they're very entertaining. So you guys are right on the money. It is the data. So you're saying basically that same confidence statement, With the D, you're able to kind of say it yourself, like, I've done this. Whereas with the C, what you have to say to the C is, this data is showing that. So I'm not telling you it, the data is telling you it. And that's where you get them, because they're like, oh yeah, right, this is factual, this is logical. Yeah, I can wrap my head around this. So the data is telling you that.
Can I ask, and I'm aware of the time in this, like
Yes.
we're getting to the end here
Yes.
of time, but for D, in terms of that, would you bring the data for a D, or would you be okay to just make that statement and be like, let's keep rolling, because the D won't care about the data?
So I always recommend to people that you arm yourself with all the things that you can. So I would definitely have the data, but I would feel comfortable not pointing to it when I'm saying it to the D. And then if the D kind of goes, oh yeah, show it to me, then I have it. But I won't bore the D. I won't walk them through all that stuff. I will have it on hand if necessary, but I feel confident enough with the D to just make the statement.
Gotcha. And for a C, it's like, here's the data, give it to them in their hands.
Exactly.
Don't
The
look them in the
data is
eye.
telling you this.
Here's
Yeah.
the data. Okay, cool.
Oh dear, I'm sorry, C's, if I made that seem whatever. It's not.
But I think it's important. It's an important distinction, because the C is like,
It is.
I'm not just going to hear you and listen and believe you. I need to actually see.
Yeah.
I need to make that, cool.
100%. Yep. So with closing now, we're looking at the closing strategy. So for closing with a D, you want to be direct and you want to highlight the results of using your service. Remember, Ds are decisive, so they will act quickly. So if you are getting good signs back from the D, so let's say this D is nodding at you, not the S, but the D, and you're getting an emphatic head nod and seeing stuff and yeah, really, and a lot of that going on, you go in for the close with the D, because they make up their mind quickly. And if they don't think that you're that interested in their business, they won't be super impressed with that. So they'll move on. So with a D, you can literally see those signs and go, okay, great. So when would be a good time to list your property? Boom, you got it. And they will go with it. With an I, again, you want to be enthusiastic. You want to make the positive statement before trying to close. So let's say you're trying to sign them up to be, to go with you as a buyer's agent, so should we get started right away so you can check out as many great houses as possible? We're going to be on this journey together. We're going to be looking for your dream home, that kind of thing. Really want to build up that connection and all the emotions around it. With S's, be thorough and deliberate. Don't rush them. They will not close quickly. They need time to build trust. Once you have their trust, S's are super, super loyal. So if you've proven it, you will be their agent for life. Outline how you're going to support them going forward. So here's what we need to do so that we can work towards. Remember, it's all about support and being there as that mentor counselor. That's what they're looking for. With C's, they will not make a decision without all the information. So use your written stats, guarantees, references, have it all lined up. So again, what you're going to say to the C is, you have all the information and the facts seem to indicate that this is the logical decision. Would you agree? So there's the indirect way. Again, you're pointing to the facts, you're pointing to the logic, and you're saying to them, would you agree? So they're agreeing with logic. They don't need to agree with you. They're agreeing with facts and logic. So that makes that much easier for them. And then responding to concerns. Okay, so this is when something maybe has gone wrong. Your client calls you, somebody, you said, don't let the back door open because the cat will get out, and then somebody did it. Now they're phoning you, With a D, remember, don't be discouraged or freaked out if they're blunt. D's are to the point, we know this. So instead of, trying to explain yourself away, even my joke I made about the being late part, they don't need to hear a lot of excuses. That doesn't work for them. You just sort of get right to the point and say, okay, I understand your concern. So what are the outcomes you need to see? So you just address it head on and you kind of take it from now, what are we doing from this point on? Got it? What do you want to do? With an I, the call with the I is going to be a lot longer if the cat got out and the cat wasn't supposed to get out. I'll just warn you. So be prepared for that. Set aside some time. Be prepared for tears. So be sensitive to them, accept their feelings, use those feeling statements back to them, mirror that, okay? So I understand how you feel. Oh my gosh, yeah, I can imagine, or yes, I had another client, whatever. All of that kind of thing is going to be better for an I. For an S, offer ongoing support and follow up, ensure that they don't feel insecure in any way or rushed into a decision. And so with the S, you're gonna be like, how can I help you feel more comfortable going forward with this? You let me know, how can I be supportive to you? That's what they want to hear. And with the C, you want to provide them with additional written information. You want to, outline the source of their concern indirectly and then kind of get at it. So like my experience with this has been And how does that compare to yours? So again, you're putting on experience. You're not going with feelings. Here's what's happened in the past. Here's what experience has taught me. That's what they're focused on. And then I have this, some of you might have seen this before. I know we're running out of time and I want to take questions if there are any. So this will be up and you know, I assume this will be shared so you guys can have a look at it, but I do also have it and you can by all means reach out to me to get it. This is kind of like a little cheat sheet about what motivates each one of the behavioral factors and what to do. So for instance, let me just go through the D for time purposes. So D, their focus is on achieving goals. They want you to get to the bottom line. They don't need extra discussion and chatting. They want you to be direct and concise. They want key points versus too many details. And then I give at the bottom a recommendation. So text them or call them, but be brief. And you'll see I do that across the board. So with the I's, you want to do the video. With S's, I do want to point this out, especially right now during COVID and stuff. S's are people that love personal notes. So those of you who know the whole Buffini with the Popeyes, S's adore getting a personal note. So that would be something I would say. And again, C's, you can email them or text them with details. Doesn't need to be super lengthy. So as I said, take the time to customize your approaches, have a look through the database, put your notes in, and you will see and you will watch that your connections are going to get strengthened and they will improve. So,
all right.
I was Q&A time.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could go back to that slide and we could leave that up because I think it's a good slide to leave up as a summary, especially for people who are a little bit less familiar.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
I am going to put, by the way, for everybody here in the chat, you can look up Discover What Works on Facebook, but the best place, and if you have further questions, because we are a little bit low on time, here's my question that I have. How do I, okay, I'll tell you straight up. For me, sometimes when I have a meeting and I know I have a high S or a high C, I will struggle through that meeting. So how can I, if let's say, for instance, I know I need to call a high I, and like you said, very emotional, right? And the cat got out. And I know they're going to be freaking out. How do I, before that call, put myself in the right position? And how would I do that for each of these?
Right.
So if I'm going to call a high I, let's starting there, just because how do I, before the call, say, okay, here's, you know, because it's a muscle that I'm not used to flexing.
Right. So that is literally why and thank you for saying to put this back up. This is literally why I create, you know, as user-friendly little cheat sheets. I think, for instance, oh gosh, I got to call this high I, right? So again, by looking at something like this and saying, what, okay, so here's what they want. They want to be recognized, meaning they want to be seen. They want to be seen as the person they are. They want to chat. They want you to engage with them. So you kind of run through that thing and then you put yourself in their shoes. So here's where empathy comes in. And this is a huge part of EQ, which is one of the other things I do. But try to really put yourself in the other person's shoes and think about it. Okay, if I were them right now, how would I be feeling? I'm a high I and my cat got out. And, you know, this is a family member and like, oh my God, what would that feel like? So I really think you sort of give yourself a little pep talk. You read your notes. Okay, this is what I is about. Okay, pep talk, you prepare for it. And then you be willing to mirror a lot of what you're seeing. And you go into it strategically because you know what that high I needs to hear. And so you're going to have the strategy in your mind. And then what I say is mirror what you're seeing. Try to come back with those things with feeling statements. Yes, I understand how you would feel. Yes, I hear that type of thing.
Gotcha. So the next question that I got was from Jaka Sikovic, who's asking just, do you have the breakdown across Canada of the D's, I's, S's, and C's?
In terms of stats, like who tends to be the highest?
Yeah.
So what I will tell you, and most of them I will say are American stats. So, you know, we might a little more D's in that. If you want a simple answer in terms of who do you feel like you're mostly catering to, what I can tell you is that the highest group out there in the population are S's. So if you kind of have to figure, not that I agree with one size fits all, but if you have to kind of have a safe approach, if you're having a really hard time figuring someone else out, try to look at it from that S mentality in terms of not rushing them, not pressuring them, you know, and realizing that you may have to work a little harder in terms of getting, you know, that information out of them because they are the listeners. So definitely the highest proportion. When you look at the stats, the highest proportion are always S's and the lowest proportion are always D's. That's the way that plays out in any stat I've ever seen.
Some people are asking about getting a copy of this presentation per se. Is there a resource or something you have on your Facebook page or something that they could get this? Or...
Yeah, so I feel like, so a lot of the people are on these pages that we have. So I can't remember the specific pages, but I have had this posted in a couple of places. But by all means, if you guys want your own, or you want to have some individual copies of this, if you want to just reach out to me, I'm happy to send that out to you, and you can have it, you know, I'll send it in its attachment. You can just sort of pop it up and have it there.
Cool. Oh my gosh, there was a question I wanted to ask in terms of that.
Oh, hi, did you get distracted?
Yeah, sorry, I did. I got Facebook here. I got chat. Ah, man. I wanted to know from like, if so you kind of covered it a little bit. Like you said, if you don't really know, actually, no, that was the one I wanted to ask, is because we had a few, like somebody was saying they're an I, but they're like, look, I'm a snappy dresser, right? So they're like, hey, you're not going to find me as a hot mess at the end of the day. Ooh. How do we
maybe they're an IC combination though. Here's the thing.
And they said they were an ID. So they said they'd done this. They said they were an ID. So
all right.
Yeah, that was my answer too. I said, maybe you're not, who knows, right?
Well, the D part of their profile would prevent a lot of that emoting. And depending on the balance of where the I and the D are, the D could be a very strong anchor so that there isn't as much emoting and stuff going on. So, you know, if they're close together, the D will kind of be that anchor to not have, like I said, any of the things that would cause the hot mess to go on.
Gotcha. I see. What about a question that I'm getting here from Elena? Oh my, Judea Nova. Oh, I hope I did that right. Where could somebody take a test for their disc?
Well, you can get in touch with me. That's what I do. I give you the information. I send it to you. It's an online assessment. So basically I send you a link. There's 24 questions. And it takes you about 10 minutes, and it's amazing. Most people, I would say, you know, 9.5 out of 10 people are kind of gobsmacked by their results and think, I can't believe this knows me so well. So yeah, it's ipsative, which means it's a forced choice. So it might say, you know, describe yourself. Are you mostly friendly? Are you mostly serious? Are you whatever? And so sometimes you'll really be like, oh, I'm this, but I'm that. But it's in those little details where they're able to pull the nuance out and really get a really detailed profile. So yeah, so reach out to me and I can hook you up with that.
Could you, I see, I always have more questions, but could you give me like an example of a profession for each of these? Like you kind of give examples of public figures, but again, I'm trying to think about how, you know, if I was an agent walking into a listing presentation, not knowing too much about these people, again, I might catch some clues and I should be aware of it, but if I just knew, okay, this person's a so-and-so, I would guess.
Yes, great question, Mike. That's a really good question. And that does come up a lot. So high Ds. Okay, so what we're going to find predominantly is high Ds they're either entrepreneurs or they are leaders in some format. So you will see that they tend to be like a CEO or, you know, in some kind of leadership position, whether it started entrepreneurial or, you know, wherever it is, it's some type of senior leadership position. So that is what I would tell you about high Ds. High Is, disproportionately sales, and not surprisingly, right? Because it's all about people. So if they're in sales, and I mean, this doesn't have to be like real estate sales. This could even be, you know, if they sell clothes at the mall or they do whatever, you know, high I for sure, very, very much into that. Another thing that you will find with high Is though is stuff like interior design. So things that are really super creative like that also would be a high I. High S's for sure. This is your GP. This is a nurse. This is a teacher, you know, daycare worker. All of those types of things are definitely clues. And then for high C's, you know, without a doubt, your engineers and your accountants, you know, they kind of have to be a high C. If you have an accountant and they don't have a high C, I might be a little worried as well. If your accountant is like a high I and a low C, I don't know.
So you got to make your accountant do the disc profile, or just,
right?
yeah. So if you're a C, you're like, hey, I want you to show me the results. But
Exactly. Let me see.
if
Yes,
you're a D, just be
exactly.
like, just tell me that you're a C. Okay, great, cool. All right, I'm trying. I always try to figure this out. Every time I talk to you, it's like I gain a little bit of it. I gain a
Yeah,
little bit of it.
you are. You're a good student and you remember it and you learn. So that's great.
Well, yeah, I try because you quiz me on it. So,
I do. Can't help myself. Comes with the territory.
so let me ask one other question I have about this is for those people, and I know there's a lot of people in the network. Like I said, there are team leads who live and breathe. They won't hire somebody without a
Oh,
disc
yeah.
profile, and
Yeah.
I do encourage, like I said, a disc profile is a crucial part of our hiring at Royal LePage Canada. I will not hire somebody without looking at their disc profile.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, for an agent who is really into this stuff, do they have, again, I'm thinking about the idea of I'm walking into a listing presentation, I want to get this thing signed, I want to, I want to get this deal started. Are they coming with different potential presentations?
Great question. Yeah. So again, like I said, and we touched on this a little bit earlier when you asked me like, so should I just like not show the high Ds, like this type of information? So I would never, okay, so because I have a high C in my profile, I could never recommend to somebody to not be prepared. So you definitely want to be prepared for everything, right? So what I would say is, you have your presentation, you've got it up there, but it's how you then choose to run that presentation. So with a high D, maybe you've got, 50 slides. The high D, you're gonna go to the ones that have maybe the bullet points, the intros to each section, and just hit it off, boom, and then skip, 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 boom. With the eyes, I'm gonna say, have the pretty page up, have the page that has all the colors and the things or whatever, and then you kind of almost abandon that and you look at them and you engage with them. And if they're interested, then you go through it, but you fully expect that that's kind of just there as, a little bit of a backup. It's there as maybe some nice artwork showing on your computer, but it is there. Again, with the S, it's there too. You don't have to go through it super detailed, but I'm guessing more detailed than the D and the I. Definitely, but more of a listening. And I think your presentation actually really helps you with an S, because S's, remember, they don't give you a lot. So it can be painful sometimes. You're like, ugh. So you can kind of do it, and then you can look at them and be like, oh, so what do you like? So what do you think? And then based on what they're giving back to you, you either speed it up or slow it down. With a C, plan on running that sucker through from start to finish, have all the details, have all of that stuff done. You'll be glad that you have it if there's a C there. And the other thing too, which a lot of people ask me, is you have to be prepared, because rarely are you just meeting one person for a listing presentation. Quite often you're meeting a couple. And I've joked about this before, but because I do so much of my work in the real estate industry, where we have tons of teams that are, mother-daughters, that are husbands and wives, I have had the, come to profile a lot of married couples. And I honestly will tell you, 9 out of 10 married couples have opposite disc profiles. So because of that, you kind of have to be speaking to each person. So if you think you're speaking to the D, you make sure you're making some direct eye contact, you're making kind of those strong statements. And then if you look over to the S, and the S is the wife, you're taking more of a, well, you let me know. And so get back to me tomorrow. That's totally fine. So you're kind of almost having to, and you seasoned realtors know this, you've known this, that you're always having to kind of work these angles, because there's husbands and wives. Sometimes you probably see very interesting things when they're trying to sell their homes. And so you kind of do want to take that approach to each one of them. So
that was going to be my follow-up question on that, because so essentially if you have a D and a C, you're like, I'm the best realtor in the business, and then you hand the C, you're like, here's the statistics to back it up. Don't say that to that guy.
Exactly. And then what you do is the next day, so the D heard it, the D either believed it or thought you were full of crap, one or the other, fully believed it and they're on board, or they're like, I got no time for this person. But then what you do is the next day you follow up with the C. You follow up with the C in writing. It was great to meet you. Here again are the stats. Here's whatever. You let me know what you think.
Cool. Wow. Again, I want to thank you so much. It's interesting to, think of this as again, we've been in such a changing world, moving to, I've read a lot about Zoom fatigue and those kind of things, which a lot of teachers are facing because they're not getting that, they're feeling, oh, I'm out. And, talking in a webinar is like talking into a vacuum sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how I think ultimately, realtors are going to have to get even better at this, because like you said, when it's coming to the digital side,
Yeah.
if you're like me and you're like, what's going on? What's this? What's this? What's happening? Yeah, no, I'm listening. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
You're going to miss all those cues. Yeah.
yeah, and it's so critical to connect with people in this way, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting
Exactly.
to see as we move into this virtual world, how the realtors who can really flex this disc muscle and really know
Yes.
how to connect with people.
Absolutely. Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself, Mike.
So with that, I always want to start. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Like I say, these webinars don't happen without people. So I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the interaction, the engagement, for being here, for asking the questions. Secondly, I want to thank you so much, Victoria. Like I said, your passion in disc. I'd be curious to know what else you've discified. Like when somebody cuts you off on the road, you're like, oh, I know exactly. But
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Television characters, people's pets.
people's
Obviously,
pets.
I did social media. Oh yeah, are you kidding? Totally. Yeah, we have a couple dogs in our family, and I don't know their disc profile. So yeah, that's not nuts, is it? Do you think that's weird?
It's not. It's your passion. I love it. Like I love talking to you about it, because every time I'm always learning something about disc, and I'm always it makes me reflect on the angles that I look at it. Somebody asked me in the chat, like they're like, so do you not hire people based on disc? And I'm like, well, my whole
no.
team are eyes, and the one associate is a C, and it's like I think it's just I know when I'm in a meeting with a high S, I've literally been like, I'm not talking anymore until you tell me what you think about this, because I will
Yes.
not go forward. And they were like, well, I need some time. And I'm like, no, 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 I need it.
Yes.
But I want to thank you so much for the
Thank you,
time,
Mike.
energy, and effort. And I'll encourage people to, again, connect with you on social, reach out to you, send a message, ask for
Yep.
these resources. I know you're a big sharer, but
Yes, I am.
and the good thing about somebody who's really passionate is you can exploit that passion by just asking them questions that they'll want to answer. So,
Can't help myself. You know it.
but in terms of that, I will remind people, tomorrow we have our virtual national sales conference. If you haven't registered for that, I'm going to drop a quick link into the chat. Oh my God, I should have done this earlier. I should have been prepared.
Whoops.
It says something about me, doesn't it? But okay, I'll drop a quick link to that in the chat here. Great afternoon for tomorrow. And then obviously on Fridays, we have our Philosophy Fridays. If you're not connected to to our RLP Nation Facebook group, I'll put a link to that as well. Oh my God, groups/RLP Nation, just to make sure that you're there. And again, Victoria did a great Philosophy Friday with Phil as well. So I'll put that in. 3 links for you. Victoria's Discover Your World, Discover What Works. Losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. I got too much going on. Discover What Works. Facebook page, again, great place to connect with her. I'm going to put our link for our virtual national sales conference tomorrow, and the RLP Nation group as well. So with that said, any last words, Victoria?
Wow, that last words, that sounded very dramatic.
Well, I mean, last words for the webinar. This is
right. Just what I said, everyone, take the time. It will benefit you tenfold if you take the time now and you figure out, your clients, you put these things into your database and you just try to make these little overtures. You will find that will come back to you tenfold when you solidify those connections. So I cannot recommend that enough.
I'd be curious to know, your next one post. I'd be curious to know, like, what technology would you use for each? I know you mentioned some of this here, like text or call them, mail or drop, right? But like, would there be a platform that you'd be like, hey, you should do, like I would imagine for a C, like a Zoom webinar like this with the screen. Anyways, okay. See, now I'm going on. This is how we go. I wanted you to have.
The high I kept talking and got off topic.
I'm just going to end the webinar and I'll just keep
All
talking.
right. Bye.
Victoria, thank you so much. Everybody, thanks so much. We'll see you on the next one.
All right. Bye.